Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and I just wanted to do a video with our yearly Sony versus Microsoft at E3 video. Now, this video, I'm actually grown a bit tired of the Sony versus Microsoft thing. I've kind of accepted that Sony just puts out titles that I'm more attuned to, whereas Microsoft puts out a lot more run and gun kind of stuff. So I've kind of given Microsoft a little bit more leeway this year, but I don't think I needed to. I think Microsoft, TLDR, I think Microsoft put up probably their best conference in years. I think Sony had a great lineup, great pacing, good gameplay, good trailers. Nothing really wowed me except for maybe one or two things, but overall I walked away happy with most of Sony's lineup, and I walked away with some confused and sour feelings from Microsoft, especially after the Project Scorpio announcement. Now with that TLDR out of the way, I might ramble a bit on this video, forewarning. So first I'm going to go through some things that I wrote down here for the different lineups. So first I'm going to talk about the Microsoft lineup. Now, if I forget any games, feel free to throw them in the comment section because I was just throwing the ones on here that I remembered. So we had Gears of War 4 and gameplay. We had Halo Wars 2, trailer for that. We had a game called Inside. We had Sea of Thieves, which they did a more Let's Play-esque thing, which I thought worked well for that game. Dead Rising 4 and the Return of Frank. State of Decay 2 with 4-player multiplayer. General Rom from Gears of War 4 being put in Killer Instinct, which is great. Forza Horizon 3, which, by the way, looked phenomenal. Scalebound, which I'll talk about in a bit. Recore. We Happy Few, which almost gave me like a Bioshock-esque feeling. It was really cool. And then we had the two console announcements, which I'll talk about in a bit. We had the Xbox One S and the Xbox Project Scorpio. So first, let's talk about the games. Let's try and save that Xbox One and Xbox Project Scorpio thing for the end. Gears of War 4. Gears of War, believe it or not, is a series I've always liked. I played Gears 1 and 2. I didn't get around to playing 3 because I didn't really have an Xbox at that time, or I didn't have access to a friend that owned an Xbox and Gears of War 3. So Gears of War 4 looks like it's following more of the same. It looked good, the gameplay that they showed. I won't deny that. It's Gears of War. And on top of that, they dropped a nice little nod with Marcus at the very end of the trailer. So I'm happy to see him, even though he looks much older at this point. Halo Wars 2, I actually am someone who liked the original Halo Wars. I didn't necessarily think they needed to make another one, but that's not coming out till 2017, it looks like now. I actually thought that was coming out this year, so unfortunate, but it looks like it is coming out early next year. There's a demo available for a week, I believe, starting from this morning with the conference, so if you're interested in that, go try it out. I don't remember much about Inside. I think I was too busy laughing because everyone in my chat was making jokes about the name that I don't really recall much about that game. So I guess maybe it didn't leave much of an impression on me then if I don't remember too much about it. Sea of Thieves was that pirate game. I think we saw this last year at E3, and it's being developed by Rare, and it looks good. I don't know if it's a game I would pick up, but I think they took the right angle with it. They got a bunch of Let's Players and they put them in a room and they basically just made them play together. I think it kind of showed off the more fun aspects of that game, and I think it was definitely the right decision for them to go with. It looked good. It looks like the kind of game I would only play, though, if I had a few friends to play it with. I don't think I could pick that game up on my own and enjoy it nearly as much as playing with friends. I expect to see a lot of YouTube videos, hilarious YouTube videos to come from Sea of Thieves, and that'll definitely sell them a lot of copies, so good job there. Dead Rising is Dead Rising, so having Frank back is nice. Dead Rising 4... It's Dead Rising. It's a zombie game that doesn't really take itself too seriously. It's always got those crazy weapons. It's always got the crazy modes. It's more about having fun killing zombies than it is being afraid of zombies. So, always a good feeling. I've always liked the Dead Rising series. Dead Rising 3, I watched a lot of that on Twitch, believe it or not. So, solid reveal. State of Decay 2. State of Decay is one of my favorite kind of sleeper zombie games. I call it a sleeper zombie game, even though a lot of people know about it. I've loved that game. I've played it very briefly, and I've watched a lot of Let's Plays of it. I love State of Decay. I'm glad they're making a second one with 4-player co-op. I think that's the right decision. Killer Instinct, another fighting game. Obviously, I grew up in the ages of, like, closer to the N64. Like, I was 5, 6 years old when the N64 came out. But, I mean, the Sega and the Super Nintendo, even well into, like, being 10, 11 years old, I still remember playing those on occasion just because the games were so good. And Killer Instinct being a really old-school fighting game, I, of course, have some time in that. I'm free at it, but that's besides the point. General Rom was a cool addition, not one I expected, but I didn't even know that they had some other characters. I didn't know they had Rash from Battletoads, and they had, what was another character they had? I can't remember. They had Arbiter from Halo as well. I think that's amazing for Killer Instinct. Forza Horizon 3, I believe it or not, love racing games as well. Forza was one of the first racing games I played, like, in college. I played that, and I played Gran Turismo, which isn't really a game, and I played it with the wheel. The feeling of playing games like Burnout or Forza or Gran Turismo with a wheel is just so exhilarating, and this made me want to pick up a racing wheel, because Forza Horizon is a much more open world-esque game, and it definitely gave me good vibes. I think it was a good environment. I think it looked good for a game where you just drive cars around. So Forza Horizon 3, excellent reveal. Scalebound, you'd think would be the kind of game I'd be excited about. It's basically a game with kind of a cocky main character who's got a pet dragon, and then you have your friends with you, so it's online multiplayer fighting these giant bosses. But they didn't do a very good job at showing the gameplay. It pretty much just showed him getting on the back of a dragon, spamming fireballs, then getting off the dragon and spamming shooting arrows at a giant scorpion thing. And it could have just been a not good showing of the gameplay, because in the Microsoft lineup, they also showed a demo of Final Fantasy 15. They did a live playthrough demo of the Titan fight, and they did not do a very good job with showcasing Final Fantasy 15. It's really weird. I feel like whenever Square Enix shows off Final Fantasy 15, they always want to show off the scope, and they want to show off the scale. And those are always, in my opinion, the least interesting videos for Final Fantasy 15. I love seeing them dodging back and forth, getting chased by enemies in the chaos of fighting tons of enemies at the same time while your allies are there performing group attacks. Those are way more interesting to me than kind of showing off the grand scale and the graphics and whatnot. It did a good job at that, and I have a feeling that when I'm actually playing the Titan fight, it'll probably play a lot better. But he spent just time pretty much looking at his hand and then holding down the dodge button. There were tons of enemies he could have been fighting while Titan was swinging at him, but he just wasn't. He just chose to look at Titan using all of his attacks, and that was all he did. So that definitely was not a good showing for either Scalebound or Final Fantasy 15. Recore, I think, and I like what my chat said. If it has 1/3 of the charm of Metroid, it'll be an instant classic. Recore looks like it has the right gameplay. It looks like it has great original concepts. It looks like it has solid but fluent gameplay. And it was just impressive all around. Recore is easily my highlight of the Microsoft conference. So if you have an Xbox, it looks great. Now, one thing I want to say, and We Happy Few, which very much reminded me of BioShock. That game looked phenomenal. I love kind of games that are messed up like that mentally, and if you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you go watch the We Happy Few trailer. That's my second high moment of Microsoft. So, Recore and We Happy Few, great performances from Microsoft. I'm so glad they included those, and I'm so glad that they showed us a little bit of gameplay. That being said, I have some criticisms about the Microsoft conference. For one, they did a little bit too much talking between games. They kind of hyped themselves up and kind of tried to make us more excited by telling us we needed to be more excited. That kind of killed it for me, because there was always breaks between the action. On top of that, they announced the Xbox One S, which was kind of expected. It's a thinner Xbox One. It's what people are, I think, rumoring a $299 price point, $299 price point, and that's good. You know, if you're someone who has waited to grab an Xbox One and you want to grab the new one, that's great. What was really confusing to me is they then, in the same conference, announced their next console, which is called Project Scorpio. It's basically the next Xbox. And it is a 4K version. You know how PlayStation confirmed the Neo, which, by the way, didn't appear in their conference. They said it wasn't going to. It's basically the Neo, and they threw around a bunch of fancy names for the strength of different parts. 6 teraflops, which is very close to a 980 Ti, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of the strength that the console is pushing out. For me, cool, you have another idea, but it doesn't come out till holiday of 2017. You've announced it now 18 months in advance. I don't like the idea of announcing a console for now and saying, here is the $299 Xbox One S. By the way, we have another console for 4K gaming coming out in 18 months. That just, I don't know, something doesn't settle with me for that. I'm not a big fan of that approach to announcing a console. It just felt like they wanted to get that out there before Sony officially announced the Neo. That's honestly all it felt like. And they knew, Sony made a public announcement that they were not going to show it. They confirmed that a 4K PlayStation is in the works, but they did not confirm what they said it would not be at E3. So, I don't know, it just felt rushed. It felt unnecessary. They could have waited till next E3 to announce it, or even to hold a conference sometime later this year, maybe this holiday season or directly after this holiday season. It didn't seem necessary, though, and it just left me with a bad taste in my mouth that they've basically announced 2 consoles. Another thing, all of these games, well, not all of them, but most of the games they announced here, they announced them as for Xbox and Windows 10. Basically meaning it was barely an Xbox conference. Yes, if you own an Xbox, that's great. But as someone who owns Windows 10, I now have no desire to buy their console. If this many of their games are going to come to Windows 10, great. For me, that makes the Microsoft conference way better because I have Windows 10. I know I can get these games. I'm not looking at the Xbox conference going, oh, that's cool, but I'm probably not going to play it because I don't have Xbox. I do have an Xbox One now, Melball one. But that being said, that's how I've always taken the Microsoft ones because I don't actually console game as often as I PC game. So it was good for me, but it was also kind of strange because it just made me feel like there was no point in me buying an Xbox ever. Like if I was looking at that and I already had Windows 10 on a computer, unless I was someone without a computer, I wouldn't be excited for most of those things. And I know there are plenty of people out there who can't afford a gaming computer, and for them that's not a factor. That's fair. I completely respect your thoughts on that. Just I left with a sour taste in my mouth between that and Project Scorpio, and that and some of the games just they were good, but they didn't really impress me too much. There were some low moments, there were some high moments. I still think this is the best conference Microsoft has put on in years. This is even better than when they announced the Xbox One, which, if you remember, that announcement was TV, 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 sports, 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 TV, sports, Call of Duty, dog, sports, TV. Luckily, that wasn't the case. They stayed focused on the games here. I liked it. They also announced some other little features like the LFG system, which is basically the same as PlayStation Communities. They also announced that little chat room feature thing. It's nice to announce console features. It's nice to update it. One of my favorite things that they announced on that front was the ability to create a playlist with music that's on your Xbox, and it can play in the background of your game. So instead of having to like do that externally and like wear a separate headset or grab your iPad or your iPod or anything like that, it's built into the console. It'll be built into the console now. So that's good. I think that's a solid feature. Probably not one I'll use, but I respect that. It is something that if I owned an Xbox, when I own a console, and if I'm just tired of listening to the in-game noises, that's maybe PvP or something like that, that'd be something I'd like. I listen to other music when I game on PC all the time, so I totally respect it as a feature. Microsoft, 7 out of 10. That's the highest score I've given them in years. It was an average. It was way better than their previous years, better than I expected it to be. So good job, Microsoft. Do more things like this. A little bit less talking, though. I think you can cut back on that. I don't think you need to be hyping yourselves up as much as your gameplay and your trailers speaking for you. Now, with that out of the way, that's pretty much what Sony did. Sony let their gameplay and their trailers talk for them. They spent very little time talking, and pretty much the entire thing was just back-to-back trailer, gameplay, trailer, gameplay, trailer, gameplay. And I liked that. I was also very excited about the majority of their titles. God of War looks like it's getting an entire reboot. It's moving from Greek mythology to Norse mythology from what we can tell, which is good. God of War, great series. I don't think it needs to stay in Greek mythology. I think instead of shoehorning in a different mythology as opposed to doing what they're doing now, I think what they're doing now is the better choice. We finally got a release date for Last Guardian, which there was another trailer. This trailer looked way better than the last one we got at last year. It is officially launching October, was it 25th? I didn't actually write down the release day. I think it said October, it was either October 25th or October 13th. I think it was October 25th. But October this year, Last Guardian, which is another one of those like Final Fantasy 15 games where people are like, it's never going to actually come out, kind of like Kingdom Hearts 3 also. Like games that we're just like, they've taken so long, we've waited so long. I feel like we'll never see it kind of games. Final Fantasy 15 this year. We also have Last Guardian, so those games are finally starting to launch, it seems. Horizon Zero Dawn, we got a great gameplay footage of that. Looked way better than when they were fighting the big dinosaur last year. It showed off a lot more systems. It showed off a looting system. It showed off a crafting system. It showed off a dialogue system where you can choose different things, kind of akin to a lot of what EA does, like with the Mass Effect series, where you get to make choices. It showed off to a lot of the different weapons. It showed off ways to analyze enemies to determine weaknesses, to find weak points on them. You don't have to kill every enemy. Sometimes you can just hit and run an enemy just to loot a part of it. It looked like a great system. The world looked big. It had warning systems for areas that were more dangerous. So overall, it was a great demo, and now I'm more excited for Horizon Zero Dawn than I was before. My high point, though, and I'm going to bring my high point up early, because this came as a complete surprise to me, and I have it really early on my list because it blew my mind. There was a VR horror game that they were showing, and we were all like, oh my god, this VR horror game. It looks scary, it's atmospheric, please don't go around that corner, I can't look. The whole kit and caboodle. We're going through like, what is this game? This is a genuine horror game that has VR functionality. What game is this? Little to our surprise, it was Resident Evil 7, which is literally going back to, it literally looks like it's even going past its roots. Because like Resident Evil 1 and 2, yes, they were more horror-esque, but I mean, with those prefixed cameras, it was more about the music and the atmosphere and just where games were in that day and age. This is literally going full-blown, like, it is a scary game. It wants the word evil to mean more than it ever has before. It's beyond going back to their roots. It is a new direction, I feel, for the series, and it's a good new direction. It's moving away from the incredibly action-based gameplay we've seen for 2 or 3 games at this point. I was a huge fan of what I saw there. It was scary as hell. One of the biggest surprises of the entire E3 so far for me was that Resident Evil 7 trailer. Another really high point was they brought Kojima on stage, and he shoved it in Konami's face. Like, he just, like, Konami's face, meat crotch, not even kidding. He made a new game that has Norman Reedus in it. Like, he's like, oh, you wanted to cancel Silent Hills? Yeah? Norman Reedus. Yeah, Norman, come here. They're canceling Silent Hills. Do you want to make another game that has your face in it and we'll just change the story completely? Yeah? Great. Pretty much what he did. Death Stranding, if I'm not mistaken for the name. And it's got Norman Reedus, and it looks like it's a horror/thriller. It reminds me of Silent Hills, but like it has a different sort of atmosphere, but it very much reminds me of Silent Hills. Like, you could have fooled me and told me that was the new Silent Hills when I saw the trailer for it. So, also very exciting. Great to see Kojima Studios putting its first game out there and it being something that everybody was excited for and everyone was cheering for. Some other things that happened. Crash 1, 2, and it's not Crash 3. It's like, I forgot what the name of the third Crash Bandicoot game was. It was like Cortex Warped or Warped, I don't remember, something like that. All of those are being fully remastered for the PlayStation 4. We're not getting a new Crash game, but hell, I'll take remastered versions of the first 3 games. I didn't even know I wanted that until they announced it, but that is extremely hype. They also showed him in the new Skylanders game, because Crash Bandicoot will be appearing in the new Skylanders game this October, and honestly, it was Crash Bandicoot. Even though, like, I'm obviously not going to buy a Skylanders game, not because I think it's bad, just because it's not really up my alley, that Crash Bandicoot came real close to selling it for me, because he looked phenomenal in that game. It was Crash at his finest, with all of our favorite moves, the spinning especially. It was great. Some other things that came out of this. Lego Star Wars. I'm someone who never buys the Lego games, but I always love the humor, and I love how they depict other things in the series. Like, Marvel Legos games are great, in my opinion. I think Lego Star Wars is going to be phenomenal as well. All the Lego games are generally good games. It's just that you kind of got to get past the fact that you're playing Legos. You know what I mean? If you can get past that, it'll usually be a good experience. It's Star Wars The Force Awakens, but as Legos. So if you've seen Force Awakens, you already know how the story's going to end. But you could get that nice little Lego humor in there. What else? We had a new Spider-Man game being put out by Insomniac. I was just at Insomniac Studios literally 2 months ago. I had heard nothing about this new Spider-Man game, so they were really keeping this under wraps. That's why we weren't allowed to talk to any of the developers. We were only allowed to talk to the people they told us we were allowed to talk to, because they didn't want to spoil that. Looked good. I heard Peter Parker. I knew it was Peter Parker immediately. The gameplay, it was hard to really see gameplay. It was a lot of what looked like pre-shot cinematics. Spider-Man games are always hit or miss for me. I feel like they're always very button spammy. So we'll see how this one does. Insomniac's pretty good with games like that. I mean, the new Ratchet and Clank game, they did a phenomenal game on, the reboot, I should say, or the remake of the first game, whatever. The sequel / remake of the first game. They did a great job with that. I think they could do a good job with Spider-Man after seeing how they did with Ratchet and Clank. So I have confidence. I'm looking forward to the Spider-Man game. Days Gone, a lot of people were questioning if it was The Last of Us 2. It's a post-apocalyptic world, zombies, tons of them, and it was scary. It wasn't, okay, let me rephrase. It wasn't scary, but there was a lot of zombies. A lot of them. He was mowing them down. Like, if he was doing a demo, that was definitely the easiest difficulty, but yeah, lots of zombies. And it had a nice verticality to it, the ability to, like, climb on top of buildings and push obstacles in your way, blow up containers. It looked like it had some nice aspects to it, but if mowing down zombies is going to be like that, I don't know how long I could do that. Like, if I was going to pick a game to mow down endless hordes of zombies, I would pick Dead Rising over what I saw from Days Gone. It was early, maybe we'll see better gameplay later, but Days Gone was not a high point for me. let's see what else. Then they did a lot of virtual reality stuff. So I mentioned Resident Evil 7 before. They also showed off Batman Arkham VR. And when I say showed off, I mean they had Mark Hamill doing the Joker's voice, and they showed Batman's mask, and then it said Batman Arkham VR. And we're like, how the hell do you do a Batman game in VR? So out of pure curiosity, I want to see how that game plays out. They also had the Star Wars Battlefront X-Wing VR mission. That's great. I've always loved the idea of doing Star Wars space battles in VR. That's something that's very interesting to me. So that was cool. One thing that was kind of not cool, Final Fantasy 15 showed off VR as well. It's a side mission, pretty much episode Deuce K, but you get to play as Prompto, which was really odd. Let's be clear, Sony probably paid them for this. This was probably not in the original plans for Square Enix. So if Sony paid them and said, hey, develop this extra thing for your game, or this extra demo, or this extra mission, where you can pretty much play as Prompto, and it's a virtual reality, and he's got the gun, and he can teleport around like Noctis can. Cool. Maybe it could be really good. I don't know. But it was I felt really awkward after seeing that, because he was just staring at, because Prompto was just staring at Cindy's tits the whole time that she was on screen. Like, literally, that's all he was doing. He's just like, Cindy, yeah. And I was like, okay, VR. Why am I not surprised that this has happened? The lowest point. Actually, this was the lowest point and an okay point. Infinite Warfare, Call of Duty. I didn't actually know this. I didn't know Sony had a competitive contract with the Call of Duty series, or with at least one of the Call of Duty developers, or Activision. I don't know. One of the parties involved with making Call of Duty or publishing it. And so Infinite Warfare, just like last year with the other Call of Duty, it had the pleasure of being on Sony's stage. Unfortunately, that does bring down Sony's show a little bit. Infinite Warfare has not been looking good. The gameplay, don't get me wrong, the gameplay is fine. It's hardly a Call of Duty game anymore. When I look at it, I can tell it's Call of Duty, but it's so far out of the bounds of what Call of Duty has kind of grown to be known as, which you'd think would make it better. But unfortunately, I'm one of those people that just kind of seeing it's Call of Duty, I can't be that excited for it. Now, if you're looking forward to Infinite Warfare, I won't knock you. I mean, it's Call of Duty. If you like Call of Duty, you like Call of Duty. That's just all it is. But in all honesty, the Modern Warfare remaster they showed immediately after looked a lot better. I'm just going to put that out there, and I think I've talked to a lot of people who are talking about the new Call of Duty. So many people have said, I'm just buying it because I want to play Modern Warfare Remastered. And while I do believe that deep down in their hearts they believe that, I do think that they're probably going to pour more hours into Infinite Warfare. That being said, wasn't the best part of the Sony conference. Modern Warfare HD looked great. I loved Modern Warfare, the original one. I played it with a friend named Jason. We played a lot of Call of Duty games. I played Call of Duty 2 with him all the time. Great times back then. That was when Call of Duty was a little bit less, I guess, oversold or overmilked, I guess is the right way to put it. When even with a yearly release back then, I could still appreciate Call of Duty games a lot more than I can now. So, Modern Warfare 1 HD Remaster, awesome. Detroit Become Human. This game I didn't know how I felt about. I was 50-50 because I didn't really understand the entirety of the game. So basically, you play as an android, and your goal is to solve a mystery and end a conflict in one of literally like dozens of different ways. They showed off maybe 9 or 10 different ways to end that mission that they were showing in the trailer. They show that you can, gather evidence, you have choices, you can answer a question, you can ask a question, and it's a lot of sort of butterfly effect kind of things, kind of like Until Dawn, but not necessarily to the same severity there. You can die, the person you're trying to save can die, you can save the person who you're trying to like kind of talk to, you can meet their demands, you can deny their demands, and all of it leads to different outcomes for the mission. So you have reasons to play the mission over and over again to see all of the different potential outcomes, the good ending, the bad, the best endings, the worst endings, all of that. I love games that have multiple narratives like that, but sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming trying to play the same thing over and over again just to get all these different endings. So I hope it doesn't only try to sell it on all the numbers of unique ways the game can play out, which is, it's good. I love games that have that sort of outcome, like Until Dawn or the Walking Dead games or any of the Telltale games, really. That being said, I didn't know how I felt about it because there's very little gameplay shown. It was mostly just back and forth text showing off all the different endings. So I need to see more of the actual gameplay that other than like the maybe 8 seconds we saw of anything that wasn't dialogue related. And also we saw Farpoint. It's a new VR. FPS game. Looks like it takes place on Mars. For some people thought it was Mass Effect for like 2 seconds. I was like, this isn't Mass Effect related, but it still looked really good. Showed off some VR shooting mechanics, you know, looking behind, like, you know, you can be like this with your actual like body with the touch controller and everything. You're not just like holding a controller and going like this, so it's a little bit more immersive. And speaking of the PlayStation VR, at the end of all of that, PlayStation VR is only $400. That's half the price of an HTC Vive. That's 2/3 the price of an Oculus. And I've used the PlayStation VR and the Oculus. Even though we own a Vive, I haven't yet tried it. And the PlayStation VR and the Oculus were pretty much equal when I played them. And they were both good. I actually really liked the two or three VR games that I played on those platforms. So overall, Sony machine gunned out just tons of games, tons of great gameplay. And one thing is their production value was definitely higher than Microsoft's. There was a lot less panning to the crowd in the middle of a trailer, which I hated about the Microsoft one. They're like, hey, look at this game. Now look at these people looking at this game. I'm like, I want to stop showing me. I don't want to see your crowd watch the trailer. I want to watch the trailer, please. Sony only did that a little bit at the end, which I was okay with, because at that point they were kind of just recapping things. So it was okay in that case. But overall, I was very happy with almost all of the Sony lineup, whereas Microsoft, they left feeling, like I said, a little bit sour. Overall, though, I think anybody who's a fan of console gaming, who has either or both of these consoles, can walk away happy. I think you can see the game lineups, the sequels, the reboots, and go, you know what? That looked good. Now, in case you're wondering about the Ubisoft, about the Bethesda, about... what was the other one? What was the other day negative one? The one that was on Sunday. There was one other one. There's Ubisoft, EA. In case you're wondering about those and how those compared, I didn't actually watch any of them. Oh, no, I watched Bethesda. My bad. I watched Bethesda. Bethesda had Quake, which was immediately made it one of the best, like, not Microsoft or Sony things. But they really fizzled out. Their Dishonored 2 gameplay, while it was nice, they spoke over it too much. They kind of walked us through it too much. They didn't just let the gameplay speak for itself. They explained the game while they were playing it. And I didn't like it. It took me out of the sort of... he literally had a point where he's like, I am going to drop down on this guy, kill him, knock the other guy aside, and then pull a propane canister towards me to blow up on them. And then he did it, and I was like, okay, you just told me you were going to do that. Like, why did you have to tell me you were going to do that before you did it? That's like not the kind of thing I'd expect on a conference. In a conference, I would expect that from like the post-conference coverage or something like that. And it was very off-putting. So Bethesda was okay. By the way, Sony, I give an 8.5 out of 10. Even though I said I like 90-95% of their games, I still think they could have done better. There were some things we didn't see that we knew we weren't going to see. We knew we weren't going to see the Neo. We knew we weren't going to see Kingdom Hearts 3. We knew we weren't going to see Final Fantasy 7 Remake. There's a lot of things a lot of us probably wanted to see, but we knew we weren't going to get. So I didn't have many expectations there. But it definitely could have been put together a little bit better. But definitely 10 out of 10 for things like Resident Evil 7, Death Stranding, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Detroit Become Human. Just a lot of games that I was excited for when I was done. And so, yeah, and then Bethesda, they showed off the new Fallout 4 DLC. We expected that, and it looked good. ESO, I will say this. I'm considering spending some time in Elder Scrolls Online. Bethesda accomplished that because of the one Tamriel update, which basically means you can dynamically level off any enemy in the world. Basically, as you travel throughout the world, it kind of sinks to a level range with which you can actually survive. So you don't need to just follow a straight storyline. You can explore the world like an Elder Scrolls game, and then as you get to certain levels, you'll unlock features that come out, and then obviously you can go to the quest to unlock other features and things like that. It sounds a lot better because it sounds a lot more Elder Scrolls-esque. The problem I'm worried about is, does that kind of ruin the direction? Like, are new players going to be confused trying to find the right features? Are they going to have enough systems in place to make sure that that things, while not being spoon-fed to you, are at least accessible and you don't get lost so easily in the game itself, treating it like an Elder Scrolls game when you got to remember you are still playing an MMO first and foremost. So that actually made me want to touch Elder Scrolls again. Dark Brotherhood I don't really care about. They just said repeatable daily quests, and I was like, I'm never going to be excited over an update that boasts its main thing as repeatable daily quests. Like, I'm never going to be hyped over that. But it was way better. I was still happy. Bethesda also, they showed off Skyrim HD Remaster. I played Skyrim on PC, obviously not a big deal for me, but for those of you who've only played it on console, it is a big deal. So for those of you who've only played Skyrim on like PS3 or Xbox 360, you have the HD remaster coming out, you may want to pick it up. Hell, I play it on PC. I might even pick up the HD remaster just because I don't like modding games. It's uneasy with me. If a game isn't a certain way when I buy it, I'm generally not interested in upgrading it through mods. Like that's just how I am. It's not how other people should be. It's just how I am. So Bethesda's was all right. EA was sports, and we like to laugh and make fun of them, but literally they're the highest selling games. Like those games do really well for EA. And as much as I laugh at them because like that's the majority of what they bring, why wouldn't it be when that's where your money is being made? You know what I mean? Mass Effect Andromeda looked good. That was another high point for EA. I think most people can agree on that. And then for Ubisoft, I think South Park was the only thing that I really enjoyed coming out of the Ubisoft one. Fractured But Whole. Yeah, I don't think much else excited me. I mean, let's run down the line. I mean, you have Division. They have a new DLC pack coming out that got previewed at some point. I think it got previewed during the Microsoft one. I think it got previewed during the Microsoft conference as well. Rainbow Six Siege. I don't even know if that was there because I didn't watch. Yeah, I looked at the lineup, and I think South Park was the only one that looked good. And I'm someone who doesn't even find South Park that funny. I just acknowledge that the games that they put out and the fact that it kind of panders to the South Park humor, while also being a genuinely decent game, is something that the Stick of Truth did really well, something I expect Fractured But Whole to do very well. So overall, this was a moderate E3. I wouldn't say it was the greatest, and for those of you wondering about the Square Enix conference, there isn't one. Square Enix has pretty much made their appearances at other conferences, and then they're going to have their own live stream for days 1, 2, and 3. There's a day 0 ATR for Final Fantasy 15 as we're speaking. Hopefully they talk a little bit about the Final Fantasy 15 VR at that thing. Overall, though, it was an average E3, I feel. It wasn't, I feel, as good as last year, but Sony and Microsoft brought the pain. They both did a good job, and I haven't said that in a long time. So let me know what you thought about E3. Let me know what the games that you were most excited for. If I had to pick one out of all of the things, I would pick Recore from the Microsoft one. I think that was the single most exciting game that I saw out of the list. Very closely followed by Horizon Zero Dawn for me. So Recore wins for me. Horizon Zero Dawn gets second place. So one from Microsoft, one from Sony. Let me know what games you thought were great. Let me know what you think about this friggin' Project Scorpio thing and why. I gotta ask why. Let me know what you think about everything in E3. Be sure to leave it in the comment section of the video. Try to be civil because I know with the whole Sony versus Microsoft thing, people tend to get a little bit emotional. I'll use that word. So just try to keep it civil, alright guys? Anyway, I'm going to get going for the night. Thank you for watching this video. I'll see you during the week. We'll be streaming more 14 as I try to finish up that animal weapon, and we're trying to stay near 1,000 subs. Hopefully my hair's almost long enough to get it dyed for our 1,000 sub celebration. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And until then, take care.